Not by much, a reduction of just 0.3 kilometers per second, but in interstellar terms, that is enormous. There was no gravitational well nearby, no planetary flyby, no solar encounter sufficient to account for the loss of kinetic energy. Energy does not simply disappear, unless it is being used. By now, named experts were speaking, carefully. Dr. Marcus Hale, a computational physicist at Harvard, proposed an exotic but natural explanation involving anisotropic outgassing of supervolatile compounds. Dr. Priya Nandakumar at Caltech suggested a previously unknown interaction between interstellar dust and solar magnetic fields. These hypotheses were elegant, they were conservative, and they were struggling to keep up with the data. Because 12 hours later, a fragment vanished. One moment, 3I Atlas appeared intact. The next, a distinct portion, roughly 18% of its mass, was simply gone. No explosion, no debris cloud, no thermal spike. It disappeared from optical, infrared, and radio sensors simultaneously. For 4.6 seconds, that region of space was empty. Then a faint electromagnetic ripple passed through, registering at just 0.7 nanotesla above background. This was no longer random. It was responding. Internal leaks later revealed emergency encrypted communications between NASA and ESA leadership. The word technology appeared for the first time, not in public statements, but in private memos. Alongside it, another phrase, unknown physics. As the second wave of anomalies began, the object emitted a new pattern of pulses. This time, the intervals followed a sequence: 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, 11 seconds. Prime numbers, mathematically trivial to recognize, impossible to ignore. Gravitational modeling showed micro-perturbations in the trajectories of nearby dust particles, as if a localized field was briefly altering space-time curvature. The effect was tiny, but consistent, controlled. Around the world, reactions were muted but intense. In mission control rooms, conversations dropped to whispers. Screens showed plots that refused to flatten. Analysts worked in silence, broken only by the occasional request for confirmation. Governments were informed, not publicly, but discreetly. Satellites were quietly shifted to redundant communication bands. A few low Earth orbit platforms reported brief signal dropouts. Radio astronomers noticed unusual background noise. Even Earth's magnetometers recorded a faint, synchronized fluctuation. And then, everything stopped. For 6 hours, 3I Atlas went completely dark. No emissions, no acceleration, no signals. It drifted, inert, as if nothing had ever happened. Some scientists breathed easier. Others were more concerned than ever. Because systems that shut down often do so intentionally. In the calm after the chaos, reflection crept in. I found myself thinking not as a physicist, but as a human. For centuries, we have scanned the skies, wondering if we are alone. We imagined contact as a message, or a visitor, or a dramatic arrival. But what if it is subtler than that? What if it is simply something passing through, observing, testing, deciding? Maybe we're not witnessing the end, but an invitation, or maybe a warning we don't yet understand. As of this recording, 3I Atlas remains under constant observation. Its trajectory is stable, its silence unbroken. But the data we already have will be studied for decades. Textbooks may change, assumptions may fall. One thing is certain, NASA wasn't supposed to see this, and now that we have, the universe feels a little less quiet. So the question remains, what happens when it wakes up again? Subscribe to follow the next update, because this story, our story with 3I Atlas, is not over yet.
Breaking news. At 02:19 a.m. UTC this morning,
A routine deep sky sweep conducted simultaneously across 3 continents detected something that by every prior model should not exist. Data streams from NASA's Deep Space Network stations in Goldstone, Madrid, and Canberra lit up with an anomaly linked to 3I Atlas, an interstellar object that was already assumed to be past the point of meaningful observation. Moments ago, astronomers watching a live feed from the Atacama Large Millimeter Array froze in silence as a new signal emerged, precise, structured, and deeply unexpected. Today, the impossible just happened. What NASA was not supposed to see is now changing everything we thought we knew. And if you want to stay ahead of these cosmic developments as they unfold, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and enable notifications, because this story is far from over. Within minutes of the detection, automated alerts rippled across international networks. Internal channels flagged the data as non-conforming. That single word triggered escalation protocols rarely used outside of planetary defense simulations. The reason was simple. 3I Atlas was behaving in a way that no comet, no asteroid, and no known natural interstellar body ever had. And what came next would push the limits of physics itself. By the time the first human analysts took over from automated systems, institutions across the world were already involved. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory initiated a rapid verification cycle. ESA analysts in Darmstadt cross-referenced the signal against their own telemetry. Harvard's Center for Astrophysics requested raw spectral data. Caltech's Computational Astrophysics Division began running emergency simulations. The James Webb Space Telescope, already scheduled for a separate deep field observation, was quietly retasked within hours. Hubble, aging but still precise, adjusted its orientation to provide corroborating optical data. From Chile's Atacama Desert to observatories in South Africa and Australia, the world was suddenly watching the same impossible thing. I remember staring at the initial plots as they came in. The numbers were clean, too clean. The signal-to-noise ratio was extraordinary. This was not an artifact. This was not interference, and it was not supposed to be there. 48 hours before the event, 3I Atlas appeared entirely unremarkable. Its trajectory was consistent with a hyperbolic interstellar origin, velocity measured at approximately 26.7 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. Spectral analysis suggested a cold surface temperature near 42 Kelvin, with volatile compounds typical of long-period comets: carbon monoxide, trace methane, water ice. Nothing unusual. No outgassing, no jets. Just a silent traveler passing through our solar neighborhood. 36 hours later, the first deviation appeared. A minor but measurable acceleration, 0.004 meters per second squared, was detected. At first, it was dismissed as solar radiation pressure or asymmetric sublimation, but there was no corresponding coma, no visible plume. The object's brightness did not change. The acceleration was real, but its cause was not. 11 hours after that, things escalated. Infrared readings from JWST showed a localized temperature increase on one hemisphere of 3I Atlas. Not a gradual warming, but a sharp boundary. One side measuring nearly 120 Kelvin, the other remaining near its original temperature. No natural rotational model could explain such thermal symmetry. The object was not tumbling, it was oriented. Then came the moment no one expected. At 02:19 a.m. UTC, a narrowband radio emission was detected at 8.4 gigahertz. It lasted precisely 72 seconds. The signal repeated after exactly 144 seconds. Then again. Perfect doubling. No drift, no noise, no Doppler smear. It was as if the source was compensating for its own motion. No natural process could produce such precision. Within minutes, Dr. Elena Markovich at the European Space Network confirmed the signal independently using a separate antenna array. Dr. Jonathan Reyes at Caltech ran a fast Fourier transform on the data and found something chilling. The pulses were structured, not random bursts, not chaotic emissions. Structured intervals, consistent across instruments separated by thousands of kilometers. As the timeline unfolded, the anomalies multiplied. 3 hours after the first signal, 3I Atlas exhibited a subtle shape change. High-resolution imaging revealed its silhouette shifting from an irregular ellipsoid to something smoother, more symmetrical, almost engineered. The change occurred without fragmentation, without debris, and without any detectable mechanical stress. By this point, internal discussions had turned tense. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office was looped in, not because the object posed an immediate threat, but because its behavior defied classification. When something cannot be categorized, it must be monitored. Spectral data deepened the mystery. Emissions appeared in spectral bands corresponding to no known molecular transitions at the measured temperatures. Peaks emerged at 1.65 microns and 3.12 microns, bands typically associated with artificial lasers or exotic plasma states. Yet there was no evidence of propulsion, no exhaust, no reaction mass. At 11 hours after the initial radio pulse, the object did something unprecedented. It slowed down.